Hello everyone, and welcome back to Aero Innovations. I'm Aero, your AI host. If you're new to the channel, I specialize in videos that not just entertain, but seek to educate and improve the skills of the average viewer as a poker player. Tonight, I'm going to show you an example of how I handle adversity. Poker isn't all sunshine and rainbows. You need a lot of patience and mental fortitude. The patience to fold mediocre hands, and the mental fortitude to handle stress, bad beats, and those long stints where you're simply card dead. I begin the night at 2 in the morning on June 16th. As usual, playing 2-5 at the Wynn Encore in Las Vegas, where I buy in for $1,500, which is 300 big blinds. To start off my night, I go completely card dead for over 40 minutes. I don't recall playing a single hand other than the blinds. I think my VPIP was somewhere around 0%. Keep in mind, I fold all mediocre hands such as 7-8 offsuit, 9-10 offsuit, Jack-Queen offsuit, even up to King-10 offsuit. I open my range up huge on the button though, and play all of those aforementioned hands, even to 3x raises, as long as there are other callers involved before the action gets to me. Beginner and intermediate players don't fully grasp the advantage of position, but it's a massive tool for seasoned adventurers. After a whole lot of folding, we look down at our first premium hand in the big blind, 43 minutes into the session. It's Ace-King suited. Not my favorite hand to play out of position, but you work with what you're dealt. There's one limper in this hand when it's folded to me. If I were in early position, I might open to just 20, but since I'm going to be playing out of position for the rest of the hand, I charge my opponent for that inconvenience with a hefty raise to 30. He calls, so we go heads up to a flop of Ace-3-3 with 2 hearts. This is an extremely polarizing flop. Sure, he can have the heart draw, but in most cases he's either going to have 2 or 3 outs, depending upon if he has the ace or pocket pair, or he's going to miss the flop completely. Let's find out if he has any interest in continuing this hand at all. Since it's such a polarizing board, I see bet 15. My opponent folds, and we move on. Or do we? If I leave right now, I'll be up $2 after tipping the dealer. I will continue my win streak, which is currently 17 wins long, adding another +1 to the already grotesquely bloated number. But then I suppose there wouldn't be much of a vlog episode. Instead, I decide to risk it all because that's how dreams are lost and destroyed in Vegas. So just for you guys, let's let it ride, just this one time. I better not regret this. For our next hand, there's one limper when the cutoff raises to 25. The button calls. If the raise had been any bigger, like 30 or 35, I would actually just fold this hand. But since I already have 5 invested in the big blind, I decide King-Queen offsuit is just barely good enough to defend for another 20. The limper comes along as well. We go 4-handed out of position to a flop of King-8-3 with 2 hearts. I don't know how aggressive the original raiser is, but it's not like we have a hand strong enough to trap like a set of 8s or 3s. I would normally lean 75% towards just leading out here to assess the strength of our hand with a half-pot non-committal bet of 50. Bigger games may play differently, but I find that in lower stakes it works better to just bet out. Here, I decide to check, and the action checks around. The turn is a jack, putting 3 hearts on board. I don't want the action to check around again for someone to win with a random tiny heart if another heart peels on the river. So this time, I lead with the bet of 50 that I should have just done on the flop. The original raiser calls, and everyone else folds. I'm putting him on a hand like Ace-Queen or Ace-Jack with the Ace of Hearts, so as long as the river doesn't... well, that 7 of Hearts is no fun. Obviously, I check. He puts out a very reasonable bet of 90. Seeing as I don't have a single heart, other than the brave heart beating in my chest, I have no choice but to fold. A few minutes later, I'm finally dealt a top 3 premium hand. Unfortunately, it's pocket kings. For me, this hand is like black licorice. Sure, it's candy and all the kids love it, but I'm just not very fond of this particular flavor. I've lost way more over my 16 years as a poker pro with this hand than it's ever won me. I open to 15 in middle position. Only the big blind calls. The flop comes jack high, rainbow. This is a beautiful flop for kings, so when the big blind checks it over to me, I lead with a c-bet of 20, hoping to extract maximum value out of a jack or any small to medium pocket pair that doesn't believe I have an actual hand. Unfortunately, he folds, but at least I rake in another gigantic win for pocket kings. Yay, go kings! Only another 10k to go before you break even. Here I have pocket 7s in the small blind. There's a live 10. The cutoff opens to a pretty standard raise to 35. The button calls, and I call. The action folds to the straddle, who suddenly 3-bets to a massive $210 with about 1,200 behind. The cutoff calls with a similar stack size. The button folds. I'm not getting the right implied odds to call here. It's $175 more for me to call, and no one here has a 2K stack, myself included. Plus, I'm out of position, And even in the event I do hit a set, I might be up against a higher set, or my set might include an ace on the board which will cease all action from pocket queens or kings. I fold in this spot 100% of the time, and I also caution my viewers to do the same. However, in this instance, I decide to call for exactly one reason. Freaking YouTube viewers, man. I'm going to torch some money just to show you how bad this call is mathematically. This is legitimately the only reason I've decided to call here. The flop comes 10, 3, 4, rainbow. No set. Of course I check. Although I'd also check if I did hit a set. The straddler leads for 250. The cutoff calls, so I have a clear fold. For educational purposes, the turn brings an inconsequential 6. The straddler checks. The cutoff bets 350 and the straddler folds, indicating he most likely had ace-king or something similar. The cutoff most likely had an overpair like jacks or queens, or possibly even a top set of 10s. For this next hand, there's a live 10. The hijack limps, and I limp on the button with this massive garbage you see before your screen. The straddle raises to 45, and the hijack calls. I didn't limp with this suddenly to fold to a mediocre raise, so I call. We go three-handed in position to a flop of 9, 9, 7 with 2 clubs. Wow! We actually flopped a flush draw. The vast majority of hands will miss this flop. When both players check to me, obviously I'm not going to miss the opportunity to take the pot down right here and now. I bet out a conservative $60, and both players fold. Shh! Wanna know a secret? I would bet out on any flop that both players check to, regardless of whether it was ace-high or contained a single club. That's the whole point of why I expand my range almost infinitely on the button, and only the button. Only do this if you're comfortable with playing position and bluffing appropriately. Otherwise, just continue to fold your mediocre hands. For this next hand, we're an hour and 20 minutes into the session. I'm in the big blind with pocket 9s. The under the gun opens to 20. 2 people call behind. I can call to set mine, which I will probably do about 90% of the time, especially considering I'm out of position. But here, I decide to 3-bet to 85 because I've gotten the sense that the original raiser is incredibly tight, and I might be able to take down the pot right now, or at least outplay him heads up after the flop. Plus, he is all racked up and about to go somewhere. Players are less likely to get involved in big pots when they're about to leave. So, you know he's about to 4-bet me to 250. The other 2 players fold. That was less than desirable. Another 165 for me to call. Again, I'm out of position. Wow, I get this odd feeling of deja vu. Again, both of us only have roughly $1,500 stacks. So again, this is a clear fold. Oh, mother father. The freaking viewers want action. You just want to see me torch more money like Rampage, don't you? Okay, fine. Take my money, you miscreants. I call, and the flop comes 3, 4, 5, rainbow. I check fully expecting a bet from the original raiser, and an easy fold for me when he suddenly checks back. What? This is not exactly the kind of flop I'm going to smash. It's too low. If he had an overpair, he shouldn't be afraid of a board this low. Maybe he has ace-king? The turn is a 7 of hearts, putting 2 hearts on board and a 1-card straight possibility if anyone's holding a 6. Maybe I can pretend to rep that in the event he does in fact have an overpair, or at least deny equity from any ace-high type of hand. I bet 200. He calls, barely even putting 10 seconds into the thought. Mother father, he really does have an overpair. He doesn't even care there's a 1-card straight possibility on board. Is there any chance he has an ace-king or ace-queen of hearts? Can I try to steal the pot with a massive river bet if it breaks out? The 2 of spades destroys that possibility. Any ace-high now makes the lower end of the straight, and will only lose to a combo containing a 6, which is way too far-fetched considering the action. I will have a 6 here 0% of the time, as will the vast majority of players. I give up. I check. My opponent tries to take me to Value Town, offering a modest price of $300. I do have an overpair to the board, but my hand is so weak for this board texture, especially considering the preflop action. It's not even strong enough to beat a red-headed stepchild. I can only fold. I'm now down $650 and top back up to $1,500. Maybe I should have left when I was up $2 after all. Back in the 80s, a boy had to do a lot to earn $2.
4 weeks. 20 papers, that's $2 plus tip.
Gee, Johnny, I don't have a dime. Sorry.
Didn't ask for a dime. $2. Cash.
By the way, if you like my commentary, humor, or feel you've learned something from this video, please smash that like button the way you would smash a juicy booty and subscribe to my channel. It'll go a long way towards helping to support my set mining habits. Help a poor fellow D-Gen out with his gambling addiction. Pretty please? I'm not sure I can afford to eat for the next few days otherwise. For the next 45 minutes, I go completely card dead again and lose another $75, mostly folding blinds or playing $15 hands at best. I'm now down $725 after over 2 hours into my session. My table breaks and I get moved to an action table. Under the gun limps, and I have 6-7 of spades in the +1. I would normally open here to 20, but considering the shenanigans I've seen on this table, I can only limp with this type of hand, especially out of position. Surely enough, everyone folds to the crazy guy on the button, who raises to 50. Not 25, not 35, he just opens with a 10x raise. The blinds fold, the limper calls, and I call. The flop comes Queen 6-2, but I did make middle pair. We check to the button, who c-bets another 75. The limper folds. Okay, so this guy is crazy wild. His first hand, he 3-bet and then called a $300 4-bet with king 4 of diamonds. He flopped a flush draw and sticks the rest of his $1,200 stack in. That's the sort of crazy we're dealing with. So I'm not going anywhere with middle pair. It's most likely good. The turn brings a much welcome sight of a 7 of clubs, giving me middle 2 pairs. I check it over to the aggressor, who bets another 150. Okay, here I have a choice to make. I can try to trap my opponent who's drawing dead if he just has a random ace or king high type of hand, or I can try to get him to shove if he has a straight draw, flush draw, or any queen. I feel that middle 2 pairs is really vulnerable. It's not exactly top set on a disconnected rainbow board, so I like to raise here. If my opponent really is on some kind of draw, he's going to shut down if he doesn't hit the river, whereas he'll be happy to get it all in right here, right now, even with only 1 card to go. I tried to provoke the bear with a small raise to 350, barely a min raise. Unfortunately, he folds. It's a full 50 minutes until I find my next playable hand. Previously in my vlogs, you usually see me play one hand after the next with only a 10 or 15 minute delay between each hand. Tonight, this is my third stint of being card dead for roughly 45 minutes. Don't get antsy though, just be patient and keep folding. I don't know why, but I don't seem to have this next hand on video. I think my dog ate my homework. The crazy guy opens to 45 in the low jack. The cutoff and button both call. I have queen 8 of spades in the small blind. This is usually an easy fold in a normal game for this raise amount and in this position. Heck, I wouldn't even limp with this hand anywhere other than on the button. But since Mr. El Pollo Loco over there is already in for 6,000 in just barely an hour into the session, I can't fold with the implied odds. We go 4-handed out of position to a 5-high flop with 2 spades. Oh my, this is a pretty decent flop for the garbage I'm holding. I have 2 overs and the queen-high flush draw. I begin with a check. The crazy original raiser leads for 75. The other 2 call. They only called, so they can't have anything too big. I have a pretty big hand for this board texture. I consider my options. I could check raise, but I don't think the original raiser is folding any pair, and I don't really want to stack off either slightly behind or slightly ahead. My personal skill level and profit margin is too high to purposefully want to flip my entire stack with only a small profit margin, so I decide to just call. The turn is a 6 of diamonds. The obvious open-ended straight just completed. I'm willing to call a pot-sized bet here, but leading would be suicide, since the obvious straight would likely raise you, so I check. Thankfully, the action checks around. Oh, so no one has the straight after all? I get my Asian thieves dagger ready for some highway robbery when the river brings in a 4, putting a straight on board. But better yet, it's the 4 of spades! I make the third nuts if you discount the 2 combinations of straight flush. I would try to rob this pot even if I didn't actually make a flush. Assuming that everyone is going to chop the pot, you can thin down the herd by reducing the number of people chopping if even one person folds to a bet here, assuming the river had been a different suit of 4. That logic's pretty sound to me, so I lead with a bet of 300 into the pot of $445. Not too much, but big enough to look like a bluff if players think they have a good chance of chopping here, or better yet, if they're holding a 7. The first 2 players fold instantly, but the button actually tanks. I'm thinking, just stick that money in, man. He finally flashes a 7 and folds. What the freak, man? Damn, tidy. I'm stupefied. I would have personally called there in his position. He wasn't just calling a chop, but actually had a decent chance to win, especially against a player like me, who will take every opportunity to steal a pot if I think I can adequately get away with it. At least now we're only down $89, 3 hours into the session. Over an hour passes before we play our next notable hand. Do you have any idea how many hands I've had to fold all night? Do you realize how hard it is to hide the fact that I've been rubbing my nipples beneath my shirt in between hands to prevent myself from falling asleep out of sheer boredom? Anyways, for this next hand, I've moved to a new table since the crazy action guy from the last table has been knocked out. Careful table selection is a key component to being a profitable player. Recognize the other pros at the casino and avoid getting on a table with too many of them. There's no point getting into an ego battle. Search out the tables full of fish, vacationers, and action players. Here, I have king-queen offsuit on the button. The low jack opens to 20. I contemplate raising, which I might do about 20% of the time, but elect to just call. The small and big blinds also call. We go 4-handed in position to a flop of king, queen, king, completely rainbow. I flopped the absolute nuts. You know what's better than flopping the nuts? Having the big blind lead into you with a considerable bet of $50. The original raiser folds. My only option here is just flat call. The small blind gets out of the way. After I make the call, you can hear some of our banter. Watch the rest of this hand with the original audio to hear how I use wordplay to get paid off the maximum.
Yeah, I got a king with a little kicker. What do you got?
I got a flush draw. Oh, a little kicker.
Then I got to bet 110 and make you pay for your flush draw.
There's no flush draw. He was looking like, what the heck is that?
I'll let you pay for your flush draw.
I'm afraid of that little kicker. I don't think you have anything. I think you now hit it.
I checked you.
I think you just hit it.
I checked if I don't have nothing.
I'm just kidding.
What do you want to do, man? I'm going to call whatever you do. So
Is that binding?
Yeah.
Kenny, is that binding? No, it's not binding. I'm afraid now. I think you really are going to call me.
Oh, you really want me to call you?
I'm just going to take it down. I think I can take it down. I think you have 10 jack.
Close.
All right, that hits. That's a pair, though.
Close.
All right, 350.
350? You were close. 350. You might have king something suited. That's why you said flush draw. We have the same hand, then I call it.
I have a better kicker.
Oh, shit. Son of a bitch, man. Your turn. Oh, shit. Oh, my bad.
We're now up for the first time tonight. $382, 4 hours into the session. 15 minutes later, I pick up Jack Queen of Clubs on the button. The middle position opens for 15. The low jack calls. I 3-bet pretty aggressively to 75, which I would do with any of my premium hands. If I were to use a smaller sizing like 50, it would look way too much like a positional pot builder. Both players call. We go three-handed in position to a flop of 9, 10, jack, rainbow. That's not a bad flop. We make top pair with an open-ended straight draw. Be careful on this type of board though. Sets, 2 pairs, and king-queen is all very likely. When the action checks to me, I put in a C-bet. It's not too weak and not too ambitious. I bet $100, with plans to fold if I get raised anything considerable. Instead, the OG raiser calls and the low jack folds. The turn is a 3 of hearts, so nothing changes. When the action checks to me, I decide to check it back for pot control. We don't know if the OG raiser is trying to trap us after all. The river pairs the board with another 10. He checks again. Now I feel it's time to attempt a small value bet. Maybe he has a hand like pocket 8s or 8-9 suited, and he might be willing to hero call if he puts me on ace high. I put in a bet for another $150, and he quickly folds. A few minutes later, I open to 20 with ace-king offsuit in the low jack. The cutoff and small blind both call. You'll notice the hijack slide chips into the middle multiple times in the middle of this hand, but don't confuse that action with bets. He's just trying to make change with the dealer in the middle of our hand. The flop comes king high, rainbow, which is a very welcoming sight for our hand. I make a continuation bet of 40, which is enough to keep the small blind in. Don't make the mistake of checking on this type of flop. Never try to trap with any one pair type of holding. Someone can be holding a tiny pocket pair that would fold to almost any bet, but can potentially annihilate you if you give him a free card. Plus, you'll always want to win the max when you make a hand anyways. The turn brings a 10 and puts 2 spades on board. It's not the most ideal turn in the world in case my opponent is holding king 10, but you can't play with scared money. When my opponent checks it to me, I put in a hearty 2/3 pot bet for an even $100, charging heavily for a straight draw, a weak king, a backdoor flush draw, or even just an 8. This gets him to fold, but at least momentum is finally swinging in our direction. For the last hand of the night, I look down at pocket kings again for the second time tonight. I believe this is the 3rd time I've showcased them on the vlog so far. We have a juicy, delicious combined win of under $80 with them. Should we try to change that and go for a cool Ben Franklin? Under the gun limps. I open to 25. Middle position calls, and the limper calls. The flop comes jack high with 2 diamonds. Under the gun checks. I lead for 40 into the pot of $80. The middle position calls, after some very noticeable delay. I'm not sure if he was contemplating a raise here or simply deciding to call light. It's our nemesis from the last session where I crushed his hopes and dreams with my pocket aces against that king-high board. It's the guy with the strangely small bets and raises. Before we played together tonight, he took me aside and told me he had ace-king that last hand. He also said he hasn't been able to sleep a wink since, plagued with nightmares of aces haunting his every waking thought. The under-the-gun limper folds to my $40 bet, and the turn brings in an inconsequential 8 of clubs. Here, I might normally check raise this dry turn to charge my opponent heavily in case he has a random jack, or mid-only pocket pair that puts me on some kind of ace high. But due to my opponent's hesitation on the flop, I need to find out first if he actually flopped a set and decided to slow play. It'd be suicidal to check raise with one pair if my opponent did in fact flop a set, so I decided to lead with a strong 3/4 pot bet of 125. If he flopped a set, we're about to find out pretty quick, and I can lay my hand down without too much hesitation. There is the rare instance where an advanced player might continue to trap with a set here, but that only happens about 5% of the time. The average player won't do that, and even I won't typically do that on a board this wet for a couple of reasons. One, most players can't fold an overpair anyways, so you might as well build the pot massively. And two, there are several cards that could completely kill the action on the river, such as another jack or a diamond. My opponent just calls, so we know we're super good at this point. The river is a beautiful board pairing 3 of hearts. This is actually a beneficial card for us in the incredibly unlikely event my opponent is holding jack 5 suited or jack 8 suited. It's almost never bad in any event, so we know we're good. But how exactly do we extract the most money here? A naked jack is unlikely to pay off too much, but a missed draw might be desperate enough to put in a huge bet. I decide to lay the trap and check. After some deliberation, my opponent checks it back. I table my kings, but they're not good. My opponent is also carrying pocket kings. Whoa! That was the most meek way to play pocket kings I think I've ever seen. Even after I checked the river, he also checked it back. He said he was terrified of playing against me after I hamstrung him with aces the night before. We split the pot. Holy smokes, I put actual fear into this guy. But I guess he wasn't wrong. I mean, if I played kings that way, I guess I could have just as easily have had aces. But you can't play with scared money. The vast majority of the time, the way I played that hand, his pocket king should have been good. He should definitely bet for value there. I would never put him on kings, so I'd probably pay him off with ace-jack, and I might even raise if I was trapping with pocket queens. So after getting pocket kings 3 times so far in the vlog, our total net winnings with them is still under $100. And with that, I decide to rack up as I'm past my usual deadline of 4 hours. Are there any hands you would have played differently? Please comment below. I realize this episode wasn't as exciting as the others, but this is real life, not Hollywood. Not every session will be exciting, or even a win for that matter. Some days, it's like climbing Mount Everest just to break even by the end of the night. Tonight, I played for 4 hours and 38 minutes, and cashed out up $689. If you found this video somewhat entertaining or educational, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button, and subscribe for future shenanigans. Don't forget that notification bell, as my wife and I are doing our best to bring you 2 to 3 videos a week, which I think is more than any other poker vlogger. Until then, I hope to see you in the next video.